We have made it to the 2024 NBA Draft here in our Portland Trail Blazers MyNBA franchise. Of course, today is a very big day in the series, and as you guys know, these draft episodes take a little bit to put together, so make sure to leave a like, subscribe, comment, do all that good stuff. So in the draft lottery, we did not move up or move down. We stayed put, and we will have the 10th pick in the first round, along with the 3rd pick in the second round. I have gotten a lot of questions about potentially being able to download the draft class, and unfortunately, I have been unable to upload it on the PS5, having very similar issues with the draft classes that I tried to upload last year. So what I'm going to do here is upload the player DNA of every relevant player in this draft class, and I'm going to post everybody's names who I upload in the description in case you would like to download them. I'm going to keep trying to upload the draft class, and if it does eventually work, I will mention it in a future video along with the comments of this episode. This is a really fun group of players within this draft class, and in case you missed the draft preview where we went over a lot of these guys in depth, I will leave a card at the top right of your screen. Our roster is in an interesting spot going into the draft because pretty much everybody is under contract for next season. So because of that, we are in a position where we basically can run it back, but we also have a lot of tradable contracts on the roster. Shaedon Sharpe, Ochai Agbaji, and Nikola Jovic have team options, which are all expected to be accepted, so we can't technically trade them today. But everybody else, we could theoretically deal if we wanted to, along with our treasure chest of future picks, including 3 first-rounders in next year's draft. So before we get started, I do quickly want to recap the mock drafts. We went into more detail with these in the last episode, but basically what is expected to happen is the Hornets will most likely pick Jaden Hudson, the Canadian forward from the NBA's G League Ignite, with the number 1 pick. Lord knows what the Rockets are going to do at number 2, and obviously we will make our decision based on how the rest of the board plays out. Normally, before the draft, I like to make a couple trades around the league. Today will be no exception. We've got a couple of deals involving picks and some players. So the Denver Nuggets were probably the most disappointing team in the league this year. They did not make it out of the play-in. They had the 14th pick in the draft, and they've got some key role players, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope in specific, who are free agents. So they will be acquiring Kevin Huerter from the Indiana Pacers. He's a good shooter, not a horrible defender. Denver's looking to get more role players, more shooters on the floor. And so Indiana will be getting pick 14 and Julian Strawther in exchange for Kevin Huerter and 2 second-round picks. The Pacers now have 2 lottery selections. The Utah Jazz have a lot of future picks, but they don't have any this year. They would like to move into this year's lottery, so they'll be trading 2 future firsts and a second to the Spurs for the 11th overall pick. Keep in mind the Spurs already have pick 4, so they will still get an early selection in this year's draft. Utah still has quite a few picks over the next few years, but they wanted to get somebody this year. They clearly like the talent pool. As for the Spurs, they have 5 first-round picks next year and plenty more after that. This team is in position within the next year or so to potentially trade for a star to pair with Victor Wembanyama and whoever they select at number 4 overall this year. So with that, we will get this show on the road. The 2024 NBA Draft is now officially open. We will finally get to learn the destinations of all of these young, talented players kicking off their NBA careers tonight. Our Portland Trail Blazers have a big opportunity to add a huge piece for this team going forward. The Charlotte Hornets are now on the clock with the number 1 pick, and it's widely expected they will select Jaden Hudson. But if any team were to go rogue, it would be the Hornets. With the first pick at the 2024 NBA Draft, the Charlotte Hornets select, Jesus Christ, guys, what are we doing? Cale Foster out of the University of Texas. Welcome to the draft, everybody. Who saw this coming? So the Hornets opt to make one of the biggest draft day surprises over the last decade, selecting Cale Foster, the talented 2-guard out of Texas. I think Foster's a good prospect, and he was definitely a guy we were eyeing up with the 10th overall pick. However, I think the Hornets are foolish for making this selection. I will say, though, I think Foster's a pretty good fit on their roster. He can play on and off the ball. He can shoot it. He can pass it. He's a pretty good defensive player. The issue I have here is I don't think he has some elite ceiling, whereas some of the other top prospects in this draft do. I think the Hornets had an opportunity to get a potential superstar, and I think they failed. I think the teams picking second and third, the Rockets and the Kings, had to have launched some smokescreen to try to convince the Hornets that they really liked Cale Foster, forcing Charlotte to stay at 1 and pick Foster. I think the Rockets and the Kings played the Hornets like a fiddle so they could get the 2 top prospects to ultimately fall to their selections. I imagine the Houston and Sacramento war rooms right now are jumping for joy. So Cale Foster is the number 1 pick. We'll see how much longer Jaden Hudson has to wait. Spoiler alert, it won't be too much longer. With the 2nd pick, the Houston Rockets select Jaden Hudson out of the NBA's G League Ignite, hailing from Ontario, Canada. I think Jaden Hudson's the best prospect in this draft, and I think this is the missing piece for the Houston Rockets. He's a 6'9" combo forward who can defend, he can guard bigs, and he can switch onto the perimeter. He's an explosive athlete who can get to the basket and score in contact. He's improving as a shooter and really showed some solid flashes as a shooter off the catch in the NBA G League this past season. The one issue with this game is he doesn't really have much of a feel as a playmaker, but that's fine. You have Fred VanVleet running the offense for now. You have Amen Thompson, who's developing into one of the better passers in the NBA. You have Alperen Şengün down low, who's a great passer as well. Jaden Hudson doesn't need to be a playmaker. He can score the ball and defend. With the 3rd pick, the Sacramento Kings select Jaden Prospero out of Texas. Seemingly everybody, including myself, believed that Prospero was the 2nd best prospect in this draft. Instead, he ends up being the 2nd player out of his own school off the board. We first watched Prospero during the U.S. Under-19 Nationals, and he was really impressive. He missed the start of the year at Texas with an injury, but once he came back, he looked really good. He looked like the best prospect on their team. Cough, Charlotte, cough. I think he's the best passer in the draft. He's an explosive, above-the-rim athlete. And I think he knows how to create his own shot. He's just not a particularly good outside shooter as of now. As a player, I think he's very similar to what the Kings already have in De'Aaron Fox. I do question the fit with these 2 guys in the same backcourt long term, and I think this is the right pick for the Kings because he's the best prospect here, but I'm not sure if him and Fox are going to be able to coexist together. The Kings passed on Jaden Ivey 2 years ago because they didn't think that him and Fox could coexist in the same backcourt, so I'm not really sure if they expect these 2 to coexist or if De'Aaron Fox could potentially be out the door and they build around Sabonis and Prospero long term. Interesting decisions awaiting for the Sacramento Kings. The San Antonio Spurs with the 4th pick select another point guard. It's Marco Romano from Virtus Bologna in Italy. This is a phenomenal pick for the Spurs. You get somebody who can be a real pick-and-roll threat with Victor Wembanyama. Romano's another very good playmaker, and I think he'll be the perfect lob thrower for Wembanyama. I think he's a well-rounded point guard, though. He can create his own shot. You have to respect him as a shooter. He's a little bit inefficient, and he's going to make his fair share of not-so-good decisions early on. But I think the upside with him is definitely there. Greg Popovich may be retired, but this is a very Spurs-like pick. And it's not just that he's international, but I feel like his basketball IQ really molds with what the Spurs like to build. And I think he is the perfect point guard for a Victor Wembanyama-led team. That'll bring up the Oklahoma City Thunder. They have 3 first-round picks this year, and they have a bazillion over the next 5 years. With the 5th pick, the OKC Thunder select Omarion Knight out of Florida State. The Thunder have drafted seemingly every different player archetype over the last 3 years. The one thing they've been missing is a big, thickly built power forward with guard-like explosiveness. And now they have that with Omarion Knight, who's one of the most impressive athletes in the class. He runs the floor like a guard. He has the quickness of a point guard, but he is 6'11", and he's not skinny. He's 240 pounds. Now, he needs to be more consistent defensively. I'd like to see him more efficient as a scorer, but I think he really fits really the one thing that Oklahoma City has not drafted over the last 3 years. And because of that, I think he's going to fit seamlessly like a glove into this young core. Now, he's got some developing to do. He's quite raw, but I think the upside is sky high. And the Thunder are in a position where they can absolutely take a swing for the fences. With the 6th pick, the Washington Wizards select Thaddeus Fontaine out of North Carolina. I'm a little bit surprised he went this early over some of the wings like Darius Springer or Cassius Maxey. But I don't have too much of a problem with this pick because I really like Fontaine as a player. He is a traditional big in the sense that he can defend the rim and he knows how to score inside. He's big, he's powerful, he's tough, and he knows how to use his physicality on you. I think he actually has some polish to his game as well. I think he has the ability to space the floor. He doesn't really provide a ton as a playmaker yet, but this is somebody who's a well-rounded scorer, and I think he compares similarly to Zion Williamson, but without being a top 5 athlete in the league. So that'll bring us to the 7th pick with the Orlando Magic, and the Blazers are on the phones. There are some guys they really like who they don't think are going to fall to 10. We get offered an interesting trade with Anthony Simons. We're going to say no for now. I don't want to give up a pick next year and Simons. The Magic select Tyson Ledbetter, the point guard out of South Carolina. The Magic have really built their team through versatile playmakers, and Tyson Ledbetter is the next guy on the list. He's an impressive athlete. He's a good shot creator, really on all 3 levels of the floor. I think he's a solid defensive player, and he's a good passer as well. Now, the Magic did just select Anthony Black last year. I think what they might do with Black is use him more as a wing, and he can still be a primary ball handler and a primary playmaker. The one question, though, is Tyson Ledbetter hasn't really proven himself to be a great off-ball player offensively, so if they have Anthony Black on the ball, what will Tyson Ledbetter's value be? Clearly, they believe in it. We're going to try to trade up here at the 8th pick, and we're going to call the Pacers about getting 8 and 14, and we could theoretically make a deal without sending the 10th pick this year. So we could theoretically have 3 lottery picks, which would be really fun. This Anthony Simons trade is tempting, but I don't think there's any reason the Pacers would do that. We're going to hold to form and not move up. The Pacers select Marvin Kamara, the power forward out of USC, a very big late riser during the draft process. Kamara is an intriguing big who I think has the athleticism to be a very versatile forward. He hasn't really shown the ability to switch on the perimeter defensively, but I think with his size, length, and quickness, that could be something he does in the future. He's got a good feel offensively as a playmaker, and he's an improving, albeit raw, scorer. I'm curious to see how him and Jarris Walker complement each other, because I think Marvin Kamara, if he develops into the player the Pacers hope, would end up being a very similar type of guy to Jarris Walker. I think those 2 types of players can coexist together on the same roster, so I think Indy will be able to make it work. One more team ahead of us. We're not going to call the Timberwolves. We're going to hold up at 10. Minnesota selects Elias Sharp, the guard out of Illinois. I think this is a great pick here for Minnesota. Elias Sharp is a perfect fit for this roster, and I wouldn't be surprised if he starts right away as one of the more pro-ready 18-year-olds you'll ever find. Sharp was not a highly regarded prospect going into the year, but he had such a good season at Illinois, and his stock really rose up throughout this season, possibly as high as a top 5 stock, and I'm a little bit surprised he fell this far. Sharp is a well-rounded scorer across the board, and I think he's really improved as a shot creator. He's a good playmaker, he's a good defender, he's a good athleticism. He really checks off all the boxes you look for at the point guard position, and I'm excited to see him and Anthony Edwards in the backcourt. So with that, the Portland Trail Blazers are on the clock for our very first pick of the series. I will lay all of my cards out on the table real quick. Going into the draft, there was 2 guys that I coveted, Darius Springer and Cassius Maxey. I thought there was a 35% chance, maybe 40%, that one of these guys would fall to 10. I know the mock drafts made it seem like there was a good chance that one of them would be there, but I didn't think it was going to happen. I definitely did not think they would both be here. So the board has played out very well. Really about as perfectly as it could have. Outside of Jaden Hudson and Jaden Prospero, I think these are the 2 next best prospects in the entire draft. They both are pretty much identical in size, 6'9", 215 pounds, but I think they're both very different players. Darius Springer is more of your tough, physical forward, whereas Cassius Maxey is more of your offensively gifted big guard. I think both of these guys have skill sets that would be great fits on our roster, and I don't think we can really go wrong either way. I'm not opposed to a trade back, but I want to make sure that we get one of these guys no matter what. If we move back here, I would love to move back up to 11 if possible. And seeing the trade offers here, I don't think we're going to be moving back. I mean, if you're offering me Javon Carter and Ty Jerome as your leading pieces, I'm not interested in a trade. I think the best trade offer we got here was for either Mitchell Robinson or Corey Kispert. That's how dry the trade market was. So we're going to keep the 10th overall pick. I did not see a world where we were going to have to pick between Darius Springer or Cassius Maxey, but here we are. With the 10th pick in the 2024 NBA Draft, the Portland Trail Blazers select Darius Springer from Duke University. Darius Springer has been the apple of our eye throughout the entire pre-draft process, and I cannot believe he fell to the 10th pick. He's got a smooth lefty stroke, and his efficiency as an outside shooter is not great. He doesn't provide a ton of value yet as a floor spacer, but the outside shot is improving. Off the dribble, I think we have seen occasional flashes from him, but I do question if he will consistently be able to create his shot in the NBA. I think he's going to be more of a second or third option for a championship team if all goes well, because he's good at everything else. He's a great rebounder, he's a really good passer for his size as well, and he does all of the little things. He's bigger than you, he's stronger than you, he's tougher than you, and he knows it. He will bully you down low on both ends of the floor, especially offensively. When he's coming full steam to the paint, you are not stopping him. I think his strength will eventually make him a good post defender as well. He's not really all that good yet at guarding bigs, but I think eventually over time that is going to be something he's good at, and he already is a pretty good perimeter defender as well. He knows how to score well inside. He's great at scoring in contact. It's really just about his consistency as a jump shooter. It certainly was not an easy choice deciding between him and Cassius Maxey. I will point out, in our first prospect profile of the year, we talked about Springer and Maxey's head-to-head matchup, which Springer had the significant advantage in. Now, that's not the reason why we drafted him, and it's not like that head-to-head matchup was the tiebreaker or anything, but now that Darius Springer's our guy, I have an agenda to push, and I will happily believe that he is better than Cassius Maxey. Now, luckily for Maxey, he's not going to have to wait too much longer to hear his name called. He's going to be the very next pick off the board to the Utah Jazz. This is a home run pick for Utah. Going into today, they had no draft picks this season, and now they end up with Cassius Maxey, who I think is one of the 5 best players in the draft. At 6'9", 215 pounds, he's got abilities of guards. He's a phenomenal playmaker. He can shoot the ball. He can create his own shot, and I think he's a pretty good perimeter defender. I don't think he has the overall versatility that Darius Springer does, and I think Springer's skill set is super unique, which is why we ultimately chose him. But there's a lot of reasons to believe that Cassius Maxey is arguably one of the 3 best players in this draft class, and I would argue he's now the best long-term piece that Utah has on their roster, which says a lot because they've done a really good job over the last few years of acquiring young talent. I'm definitely curious to follow his career, and I want to see how this rivalry that I guess we've created between Darius Springer and Cassius Maxey ultimately unfolds. Let's move forward now. The Blazers certainly eyeing some other guys up, potentially to move up in the future, but for now, we're going to hold pat. With the 12th pick, the Oklahoma City Thunder select Sheikh Doucouré from Germany. He is a very raw player, and you will notice off the bat, he is not very good. However, for a team like Oklahoma City, I don't mind them taking a shot on upside. This is a very similar pick to what they did with Ousmane Dieng a couple years ago. It hasn't worked out with Dieng yet, but he's only 21 years old. Doucouré isn't really all that good at anything other than the fact that he's a freak athlete, and the Thunder are hoping that his athleticism will ultimately tap into a very unique skill set that they can build around. The Detroit Pistons select Tanner Calhoun out of Kansas. The Pistons had a very positive season, making the play-in tournament. The one thing this team is missing, though, is spacing, and now they get one of the better off-ball offensive players in the draft. I don't think Tanner Calhoun has some crazy ceiling or anything, but he's a really good shooter, especially off the catch. He's not all that good of a defender, though. He's not a 3-and-D guy yet because he doesn't have the D. He's a very similar prospect to Grady Dick, and it's not that they're both white and both went to Kansas and both the 13th overall pick, but he is basically a copy and paste of Grady Dick. And the final pick in the lottery, the Pacers select Caden Ko out of UConn. I like this pick for Indiana. I think Ko can play the 1, the 2, or the 3. I think he is an intriguing offensive player because of his playmaking ability. He's very raw as a scorer, though. I think he's got some offensive upside, but he needs to improve the jump shot. I think there is some talent there defensively, though. He's got some work to do, but I think he's got a good feel for the game as a playmaker. So now we are out of the lottery and into the middle portion of the first round. Again, the Blazers do not have another first rounder as of now, but there are a lot of guys that we like that are still on the board who obviously will not make it to the second round. So because of that, we will certainly consider making trades. The Pelicans have 3 of the next 8 picks, 15, 19, and 22. We got an intriguing offer here with Jordan Clarkson for the 15th pick and a future pick, but I don't think New Orleans would do that. That's not very realistic. I tried some offers with 19 and 22 as well. I couldn't find a deal that I liked and I felt was realistic for New Orleans, so for now we're going to hold off. With the 15th pick, the New Orleans Pelicans select Cameron Banks out of Duke. I think Banks will finally give the Pelicans that long-term point guard that they've been looking for since they drafted Zion Williamson. I think him and CJ McCollum in the backcourt are going to be a good tandem together. You already have other good defensive players in the lineup with Herb Jones and Trey Murphy, so it's not like the fact that their backcourt is not good defensively is the end of the world. He's a good athlete, he's a good playmaker, and I think he's got some good scoring upside. I like the fit here with New Orleans. He was a big riser throughout the year, and he ends up going in the top half of the first round. The defending NBA champion New York Knicks select Tyron Howard out of Florida Atlantic. I think he's going to be the perfect backup for Jalen Brunson. I think he's going to be an NBA-ready role player right away because he's a great passer and he's a great defensive player. In the NBA draft, the picks are not reordered based on playoff success. Even though the Knicks won the title, they still get the 16th pick because they had some of the least wins of all the playoff teams. So lucky for the Knicks, they win the title and they get a great player here. With the 17th pick, the OKC Thunder select Amadou Mwangi, the big man out of UConn. There was a lot of you guys that wanted us to move up for him, and he was the number one guy on my list outside of the lottery. I should have seen this coming. The Thunder like to pick unicorn type of players, and that is exactly how I can describe Mwangi's game. He moves around like a guard. He was one of the fastest players at the Combine, and he's 7'1", 250 pounds. So on brand for the Oklahoma City Thunder. None of their picks have been surprising. We finally have a trade with the 18th pick as the Knicks, who just won the championship, are trading Mitchell Robinson to the Bulls for this selection. Nikola Vucevic appears to be out the door, so the Bulls get their new center. The Knicks are trying to stay young and continue to add young talent, and with the 18th pick, they end up selecting Ricky Stenson, a guard out of Louisville. This trade is kind of funny because last year in our Knicks franchise in the 2024 draft, we traded Mitchell Robinson to the Bulls for a first-rounder. That pick ended up being Coco Diablo, which obviously was a great pick, so Ricky Stenson certainly has some shoes to fill. Apollo Cone is the 19th pick to the New Orleans Pelicans, another guy we certainly would have considered moving up for here. Cone was a very highly projected pick at the beginning of the season because of his playmaking at 7'3". The thing is, he's really raw on both ends of a floor, but I think he's got some great offensive upside, and with his size, it's hard to believe he won't be a good rim protector. Jace McClain goes to the Phoenix Suns here at 20. I think McClain's got the ability of an NBA role player, and because of that, I think he's going to be a good fit for the Suns. At 6'8", 240 pounds, he's got a pretty similar build to that of David Roddy, and similarly to Roddy, he climbs up into the first round through the end of the pre-draft process. The Atlanta Hawks with the 21st pick select Nicky Valentine out of Miami. Sometimes it never hurts to grab the white boy who can shoot it from the corner, and Nicky Valentine can certainly do that. He's a pretty good playmaker as well for a 6'7" wing, and he's a good defensive player. I think he's got a high floor. He's going to be a solid 3-and-D guy for an Atlanta team who's looking for role players after trading A.J. Griffin and DeAndre Hunter last year in order to acquire Pascal Siakam. The New Orleans Pelicans, with their third pick of the day, select Bryce Watson out of Dayton. He comes in as a 77 overall. Great value here for the New Orleans Pelicans. Bryce Watson was one of the top recruits coming into the season, and he was just super inconsistent, super inefficient at Dayton, but we saw that playmaking ability and his ability to see the floor offensively at his size. Dayton used him off the ball primarily, and I think because of that he struggled, so I hope the Pelicans know how to use him as somebody who can play on and off the ball, and if they use him successfully, he's going to be one of the 10 best players in the draft. The Brooklyn Nets select Florian Mack out of Australia, a big 6'10", 250-pound forward who not only can guard the post, but he's got the ability to switch onto wings, which is really impressive for somebody at his size. It's hard to find somebody who's that mobile and that big. I think he's got scoring upside as well, and I think this could end up being one of the better picks of the first round. The Celtics have back-to-back picks. They start with Wyatt Lowerman, the guard out of BYU. So I'm sure the Celtics fan base will be quite happy about this selection. The BYU Cougar will potentially back up the talented backcourt that the Celtics already have in place. And then the Celtics are right back up here with the 25th pick in the draft. However, they're going to receive a phone call from the Portland, Oregon area. The Blazers are looking to package Jordan Clarkson and Chris Murray to move up here for 2 future first-round picks and Jordan Walsh. The Celtics say no, so we're going to hold off. Boston at pick 25 selects Sebastian Boyer out of Oklahoma State. I can't quite put my finger on it, but I think the Celtics' top 2 picks have something in common, and I think Celtics fans are going to be rather pleased about this. I think both guys will certainly be able to help as potential young role players for their championship team, as the Cleveland Cavaliers select Federico Simone Mandrinin out of Florida Atlantic. At just 18 years old, I think he's one of the more polished players in this draft because he can shoot the 3-ball and he can play defense. If you can do both of those things, you will get minutes for playoff teams, and I think Federico Simone Mandrinin is going to be a great fit for the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Indiana Pacers now with their 3rd first-rounder of the day, but not for long, perhaps. We're looking to package Jordan Clarkson again here for the 27th pick and TJ McConnell. They say no. We're going to look to potentially add Chris Murray, maybe get a second. They say no. I take out the second. And sure enough, Indiana ends up saying no. So I don't think this deal is going to happen. I added another second-round pick from Toronto just to try. I don't think this is going to work. We're not giving up any more. So with the 27th pick, the Indiana Pacers will end up selecting Rambo Ramin out of Miami. 6'9", 220-pound power forward. He's a versatile player who, again, is kind of similar to Jarris Walker and Marvin Kamara, who are both already on the roster. Clearly, the Pacers have the type, and I don't blame them because I like this type of player too. I was very high on Jarris Walker last year. With the 28th pick, the Sixers are on the clock. We're trying to trade up here. Jordan Clarkson, Terrence Mann being in the deal. I add Chris Murray. The Sixers say no. I don't think we're going to trade up. Our second-round pick is only like 5 picks away. Jordan Clarkson, you've been spared today, buddy. The 76ers end up selecting Cade Rutulo, a guard out of North Carolina. What the Sixers have missed during the Joel Embiid era is juice off the bench offensively from their backcourt. I think Cade Rutulo is going to be able to give them a spark plug as somebody who can score and get his teammates involved. We're only a few picks away from our selection, 33rd overall. That starts with the Miami Heat here with the 29th pick, and they will select Fabian Hübner, a guard from Germany. If we were to move up in the mid-20s, this is the guy we would have picked, and he was our target for the second round, so unfortunately we will not be getting him. I really like Hübner's skill set. At just 19 years old, he's not a bad scorer. He can score from all 3 levels. He's got a good feel as a playmaker, good defender. He's a really good athlete, one of the best in the draft. I don't know how he fell this far. And with the 30th pick, the Toronto Raptors will select Damalio de los Santos, a 7-footer from Spain. He is a big, tough, physical player who I think has a lot of scoring upside. His defense and his athleticism make him very tempting, and I think the Raptors are really going to like him. And so that will wrap up the first round of our draft. We wanted chaos, and boy, did we get chaos. The Hornets threw a complete curveball, selecting Kel Foster out of Texas with the #1 pick, leading to Jaden Hudson and Jaden Prospero sliding a spot. As for us, the board worked out really well. The 2 guys we wanted, Darius Springer and Cassius Maxey, were both somehow available. We end up going with Darius Springer, and we do not move back into the first round, although we did send some offers out. Luckily, we are the 3rd team up after the Rockets and the Thunder. Everybody who's not 100% scouted is still on the board, and there are some intriguing players who are left, and there are multiple players who I would be good with at pick 33. Hopefully the guy we are not targeting goes before that. We will start with the Houston Rockets at pick 31, and they will select Zayshawn Small, a center out of Georgia. Sure enough, he was the guy that we were targeting. Small ended up being the highest drafted player in the second round at a 74 overall. Oklahoma City at 32 selects Kiki Aurelius out of Tennessee, a talented 6'10" power forward. So that'll bring the Blazers here with the 3rd pick in the second round. The guy we really wanted, Zayshawn Small, is off the board, but there are other guys we liked. There's nobody left who we had invited for a pre-draft workout. Keep in mind, we did invite Zayshawn Small for one, but there are multiple guys whose upside I do like with the 33rd pick in the draft. And rather than going for multiple second-round picks in the future, we're going to stick and pick and select an intriguing prospect. With the 33rd pick in the 2024 NBA Draft, the Portland Trail Blazers select Fritz Bengaro, an 18-year-old forward from Brussels Basketball, which is a basketball club in Brussels, Belgium. Bengaro hails from Austria. So the Blazers are going to be going with a talented 6'10" forward in Bangaro. He's got a good jump shot, whether it's off the catch, and he's improved as well, whether it's on the move or off the dribble. I think he's a pretty good passer at just 18 years old. He's got a good natural feel of the game offensively. He's not a great defensive player, but I do think he's got some long-term upside there. He not only has shown flashes as a rim protector, but he has also shown flashes to switch on the perimeter. I think he's got good mobility for his size, and I think he's going to get bigger and stronger as he gets older. Here he is in transition, pops a three ball. Love to see the scoring upside. I think he's got an intriguing bag down low in terms of his post moves. He's got some things to work on there, and overall, I think he's pretty raw. We're drafting him for upside, though. I don't think he's going to make a huge impact in year one, but he's only 18 years old. He's one of the youngest players in the draft. The plan is for him to come right over to the States. He's going to be on our active roster next year. He's probably going to play a lot in the G League, but he'll be here for the Summer League, and he will be on the team next year rather than in Europe. Let's simulate here through the rest of the second round. We're going to move pretty quickly. Maybe the Blazers move up again. We'll see. Some intriguing picks include Julian Memphis going to the Knicks. He'll have to help replace Mitchell Robinson down low. Cameron Pencaro from Australia. I thought that was a pretty good pick. Joshua Villarreal to the Nuggets. He's going to be a good role player for them. Enzo Shabazz, I like his upside. He ends up with the Sixers. Alfonso Thanopoulos, the son of Apollo Thanopoulos, is a Knick. That's kind of ironic if you think about it. Darren Graham from UConn. I think he was probably the best prospect left after we selected Bangaro. He ends up going to the Boston Celtics. Now around halfway through the second round, DeAndre Kane is an intriguing pick, also going to the Boston Celtics. Johnny Cortez, a 7'2" big man, goes to the New Orleans Pelicans. 10 picks to go now. Kurasai Inyerne goes to the Wizards. I think that's a pretty solid selection. Reggie Allen from the Overtime Elite program ends up in Charlotte. I thought that was a pretty good pick here down the board. DeAndre Tuesday, I think, is a solid pick out of Memphis. He ends up with the Golden State Warriors. I like Connor Hartman quite a bit. He ends up going to the San Antonio Spurs. Just 3 more picks to go is Indiana selects Emilio Fittipaldi out of Duke. Josta Habanera goes to the 76ers. And then Mr. Irrelevant to the Jazz is Kadeem Jackson Jr., a talented defensive-minded wing out of the University of North Carolina. So there you go. That's the second round at the draft. The Blazers stand pat, and they select Fritz Bangaro, who ends up as a 71 overall. Now, obviously, Zayshawn Small's a little bit better. He's a 74, but you can't get everything you want, and I think Bangaro is a good consolation prize. So a pretty fun draft for sure. Normally, as you guys know, I like to move up and down the board, and I did think about making some moves. I called teams to try to trade up from both our first and second round pick, but ultimately we held to form with the 10th and 33rd picks. We didn't add any selections, we didn't subtract any selections, and we've still got all of our picks next year, and we've still got all of our players. I think we made 2 pretty good picks with Darius Springer, who's going to be able to make an immediate impact and hopefully become a core piece of this team down the road. And I think for the 33rd pick in the draft, Fritz Bangaro has some real upside. I think we had one of the better draft classes for sure. Some other notable draft classes included the Sixers. They had 4 selections. I thought they did pretty well across the board. I like what Boston did with their 4 picks as well. I think they did a pretty good job. The Hornets obviously made an interesting pick at 1. I like Kel Foster. I don't know if I like him enough to select him with the top pick in the draft. The Magic had an interesting draft. I was surprised with them selecting Tyson Ledbetter. I thought the Pacers had an intriguing draft with their 3 first-rounders. I thought New Orleans did phenomenal considering where they picked. They got some real upside down the board. The Rockets got very lucky with Jaden Hudson. The Rockets got the highest-rated player in the first and second round. I thought Phoenix did a good job. I thought OKC did phenomenal. They hit on all 3 of their first-rounders. And I really like Elias Sharp in Minnesota as well. So that's going to wrap up today's episode. Next time around, we're going to go through free agency and do everything prior to the start of the regular season. Again, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Peace out.